Welcome to Banfield. I have a couple of questions for you tonight. How much are you willing to risk if it means getting one American citizen back from the clutches of an awful dictator? How dangerous are you prepared to make the world if it means saving an American who's been wrongfully detained, thrown in a gulag in a foreign country for nearly 4 months? Is it worth freeing one American if it means putting others, maybe even thousands, including other Americans, in harm's way? This is a tough one. And the reason I ask you these questions is because these are the exact questions the Biden administration is grappling with tonight. Because there are reports that they're considering a prisoner swap. U.S. basketball star Brittney Griner, held in a Russian prison for a Russian arms dealer named Viktor Bout. Actually, he's better known by his other name, the Merchant of Death, and he's locked up in Illinois. Certainly, Griner's friends and family, her legions of supporters, want her back at any cost. Of course they would. We all would. We would all want that for our loved ones. But this decision is not without its really difficult controversy. Viktor Bout is a very dangerous Soviet arms dealer, one of the worst. U.S. authorities say he's been trafficking arms since the 90s to dictators and terrorists all over the world. In 2008, he was arrested in Thailand for trying to sell hundreds of surface-to-air missiles and thousands of assault rifles that were destined to shoot down American pilots. Bout was extradited to the U.S., where he was convicted and sentenced to 25 years, and he's been behind bars ever since. And by the way, Americans have been all the safer for it for the last 14 years. But that's the guy that the United States government is now contemplating handing back over to the Russians in order to secure the release of one Brittney Griner, in order to get her back home to her family. Is this the right trade? Is it a fair swap? And before you make your decision, yes, there's more to the story. The United States has taken part in a number of prisoner swaps over the years. In April, just April, Trevor Reed, a U.S. Marine veteran who'd been held in Russia for 2 years, he was traded for a Russian drug trafficker. A drug trafficker, definitely a risk to society, but not the agent of death that Viktor Bout is. And in June of 2020, a U.S. Navy veteran named Michael Hook, who had been held in Iran for 2 years, he was released in exchange for an Iranian doctor who'd violated Iranian sanctions in Florida. Now, again, a sanctions violator, but not quite the danger of an arms dealer. In February 2020, then President Trump agreed to the release of nearly 5,000 Taliban prisoners in Afghanistan in exchange for 1,000 Afghan prisoners. But that trade was arguably a disaster. Just a year later, when President Biden pulled the U.S. troops out of Afghanistan, 13 U.S. service members were killed in that horrific attack at Kabul airport. And some of those Taliban prisoners may have been involved. Plus, when the Taliban retook that country, they ended up springing all their men anyway from the jails that they'd been held in. And then back in 2014, one of the most infamous prisoner swaps. It involved then President Obama trading 5 high-risk Taliban members for one U.S. soldier by the name of Bo Bergdahl. Bergdahl had been captured in Afghanistan after deserting his post, and the U.S. gave up 5 dangerous men to get him back. So how would the Brittney Griner for Viktor Bout trade measure up? One is a basketball star, the other is a deadly arms dealer. But is any American being held prisoner in a foreign land one too many? And is it potentially worth the risk? I want to bring in 2 people who I'm sure have some thoughts on this matter. Laura Ballman is a former CIA operations officer and a national and global affairs expert. And Bob Baer is a former CIA agent who knows a lot about dealing with Russia. His latest book is called The Fourth Man, The Hunt for a KGB Spy at the Top of the CIA and the Rise of Putin's Russia. Welcome to you both. Laura, let me just begin with you, if I may. What's happening behind the scenes right now, and which agencies are likely in these discussions making this really important decision?
Well, national security is a team sport always, but especially in this sort of situation. So you'll have the National Security Council, which coordinates all of these participants, the Secretary of State, and the DNI, and the Director of the CIA. Those are the principals who will be involved, as well as often the head of justice, and maybe someone from the Pentagon, depending if the American is someone in uniform.
So, Bob, it's odd to even have the kind of conversation, but I think it's the hard conversation they have to have, the value of a person versus another person. And it feels very transactional. But like I said, I think this is effectively a transaction. You were in, I think, Dushanbe in Tajikistan when that merchant of death was actually making a deal, selling arms for Russian military intelligence. What do you make of this person releasing that dangerous man in a trade like this?
Well, what we have to understand is that Victor Bout was active reserve. That means he was operating with the permission, at least, of Russian intelligence. So when he's selling weapons to Colombia to kill Americans, this was effectively a Russian operation, but he's a proxy. It's hard to prove. But for me, the problem is the principle. You have an arms dealer who's killing Americans, and Griner is a hostage, if you want to look at it that way. She shouldn't be in jail. So what we're telling the world is, all right, if you lose somebody to the United States in prison, we're going to take your citizens and we're going to hold them until you make that trade. And it's the whole idea of international law is, with this trade, would be falling apart.
I've heard the term trade bait, and I wonder what you think about that, Laura. I mean, trade bait, it sounds completely normal for Russia. Just grab an American and then try to get your guys back.
Look, swaps happen all the time. They don't always happen in times of war. I mean, this is clearly a heightened situation. And sure, Victor Bout is not a good man. I mean, he has murdered. He has, he sold landmines where civilians get hurt. I mean, he's clearly was indicted and found guilty in a court of law fairly. He's also a personality in Russia. I mean, Maria Butina, who was involved in a swap a few years ago, she was recently touting his being Victor's artistic prowess at an exhibition in Moscow in December, where Victor Bout's drawings were on display at a civic organization. You know, pictures that were given to Russian diplomats in the United States, presumably in Marion, Indiana, where Victor is incarcerated, and then carried back to Moscow. So, you know, if the U.S., the team of national security experts decides that now is the time to swap him, then they've assessed that he has been debriefed. I mean, we're talking years. Put him back out on the street, but is he really going to be that useful now that we know his entire network?
Well, and not only that, but Bob, maybe you can weigh in on this. Look, I've never been in the business of international arms dealing. However, I do know that it is, you have to be in the game to be really good at it. And he was probably one of the best in the world. And he's been out of the game for 14 years. So is he rendered sort of useless, or can he get back on track real quick, Bob?
I agree. He's useless at this point. He can't travel overseas. He could be grabbed again. Any contacts he have are useless at this point. And the Russian arm dealers, there's a lot of them, and they're all over Africa right now, killing people. He's easily replaced. And if we don't trade him for Griner now, she will spend many, many years in jail. Putin, it feels a loyalty to this man and intends to force this trade through, whatever it takes. And all I can say is, if there is a trade and something else happens, as an American, you are at risk getting thrown into a Russian jail for no reason at all, and basically stay away from Moscow.
Well, I think that begs this, Laura. The U.S. the U.S. State Department actually released a security alert on February 9th. This is important because Griner was grabbed almost 10 days later, 8 days later on February 17th. And here it is. I want to read it because if you saw this, I don't know who out there would make a trip to Russia, but okay, this is sent out on February 9th. The U.S. Embassy reminds all U.S. citizens that the Department of State's travel advisory level for Russia is at level 4, do not travel, for reasons including harassment against U.S. citizens, harassment by Russian government security officials, and the arbitrary enforcement of local law, as well as an increased tensions along the border with Ukraine. Russian officials have unreasonably delayed U.S. consular assistance to detained U.S. citizens, and here's the really important line, and have arrested U.S. citizens on spurious charges, denied them fair and transparent treatment, and have convicted them in secret trials and or without presenting evidence. So, Laura, when I read that, I still think of this wonderful WNBA star who was working in Russia. This was her job. She played at the WNBA, and because they pay such crap, she had a second job playing in Russia. So she lived there. This wasn't a vacation. This was her job to be there. Does it make a difference if like you can see her there, she is voluntarily going into a zone with a warning like that when they're having this debate, in Washington about what kind of risk it would be to trade for her?
A couple of days ago, I was speaking to an Iranian American who had just returned from Tehran, and we were talking about the calculus that went into his decision to travel. And he decided that he would go, but that he would not stay with a politically prominent foreign diplomat he knows there. And I think that it's similar in Russia in that we don't know what was in her mind, but I can imagine that if I were playing, which I wouldn't, but if I were employed by a team in Russia, one might have the false sense of security of, I'm with an official establishment, I'm protected. But on the Russian side, this swap is probably being run by the counterintelligence division, or it's called the DCRO, and it's what in the old days was the second chief directorate under the KGB. So these are, it may have been drugs that were the public premise, but it's really the FSB that's running this, and that's scary
what they said
for her.
This is what they said. They said that in her luggage was trace amounts of hash, cartridges for her vape device, which many said is not likely. They said she's an athlete, and that's probably not likely that this could be a false charge. I'm not going to weigh in on that. I'm not going to litigate that here. But Bob, one of the things that is undeniable is that Victor Bout, the merchant of death, made $50 million selling weapons to the Taliban. Last I checked, they had been our enemy at that point and beyond. So those weapons were used against us. The man is responsible for death. He is often known to have funded two different sides of a war at the same time in Africa. And even though America pleaded, trying to get peace and stability in Africa, with him to stop doing that, he just kept doing it and went on his merry way. And at the same time, Bob, you've got this family of Brittney Griner, right? She's got a wife who's been begging on Twitter to please do something. And then she's got a family who's staying very quiet. And I wondered, Bob, what your estimation is of the strategy of family members and loved ones who have someone like Brittney stuck in a gulag in Russia. Should you be noisy? Is it the squeaky wheel gets the grease? Or should you be quiet and strategize behind the scenes?
You have to make a lot of noise. You have to remind people this is a political decision that the president's going to have to make. And don't forget, Reagan made this decision in Iran-Contra, where he traded weapons to a very bad regime that it was killing us, including blowing up the Marines in '83 for American hostages. And it was the Iranians taking the hostages, and he made that calculus, and he almost lost the presidency for it. So this is not an easy decision. Certainly the CIA knows what's at stake here with Victor Bout and Griner. And this is a vicious, vicious regime in Moscow, in Putin, is going to drive this right until the end, and until he gets boot back. And what can you do? If I were sitting in the Oval Office right now, I can't tell you.
So, Laura, speaking of the Oval Office, are
Americans
Brittney's friends and family involved? Like, are they in on the conversations? Are they on the outside? Will they find out if she gets home or if she doesn't, or are they an active part of all of this?
I mean, usually someone in the family, usually there's a point person in the family. As a principle, we don't leave Americans behind. And so that's what's driving a lot of this.
Hey, one last question, Bob, and that is this. Paul Whelan is there as well. And he is a U.S. Marine. He's a veteran. He's been there for, I think, 3-4 years, almost 3.5 years now. And some have said, we should have two. We should get 2 prisoners if we're going to give up someone who's that high value on the Russian side. Is that at all in the mix? Is that a possibility? Or is Putin just the world criminal where he can bust into your house and steal the first floor, and then you have to negotiate away your first floor? Or he can steal your daughter, and then you have to, negotiate your dog? I mean, it just seems ridiculous.
We should get both back. Whelan is not a spy. The Russians are accusing him of being one. I can guarantee he's not. They planted evidence on him. He's another hostage. We should get them both back and just cut this nonsense out with Putin. I mean, we can start, I know we're not, but grabbing Russians in New York and London and the rest of it. It's a horrible game to play, but somebody has got to stop Putin, obviously, with Ukraine. But right now, I would trade these 2 hostages and get them back. And it's just a warning to Americans. You are sort of on your own from here on out in Russia.
Read those State Department advisories. I mean, they say it for a reason, and this is one of them. And my heart breaks for Brittney's family and for Brittney, because her life is not comfortable right now. Laura Ballman and Bob Baer, thank you so much. Really appreciate the conversation. And let's stay on this and figure out if they make the decision or not.
Thanks.
Thanks so much. Thank you for watching. Go to newsnationnow.com to find NewsNation on your television provider. And don't forget to click the red subscribe button below to get more of NewsNation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.